Richard sat frozen in his expensive suit, watching his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. 6 months ago, Maya had been just another charity volunteer he could manipulate. Disposable, controllable, a secret he could bury in the shadows of George's tight-knit business community. Richard leaned forward, clearly enjoying what he thought was her naive confession. Till things to a dark turn? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The gavel slammed down like a gunshot, but it wasn't the judge's voice that silenced the packed Atlanta courtroom. It was hers. Every eye turned toward the woman standing at the witness stand, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the designer suits filling every seat. For months, they'd whispered about her in country clubs and corporate boardrooms. Maya Robinson, the nurse who destroyed Richard Lawson's perfect marriage. The mistress who'd brought down one of George's most powerful men. But as she gripped the microphone with steady hands, her voice carried something none of them expected. Authority. I'm not who you think I am. The judge's face went white. He knew that name. Robinson. In Atlanta's elite circles, some names carried weight heavy enough to crush empires. The gallery erupted in whispers, but Maya's next words cut through the chaos like a blade. Richard Lawson didn't just have an affair with me. He stole from me my entire family fortune, the one you all thought belonged to his wife. It's mine by blood. Richard sat frozen in his expensive suit, watching his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. 6 months ago, Maya had been just another charity volunteer he could manipulate. Disposable, controllable, a secret he could bury in the shadows of George's tight-knit business community. Now, she held documents that proved his millions came from fraud and murder. The mahogany panels gleamed under harsh courtroom lights while Atlanta's power players processed what they were hearing. This wasn't just about adultery anymore. This was about legacy, inheritance, and blood money built on decades of lies. Maya's fingers trembled as she opened the manila envelope, but her voice stayed strong. Your Honor, I have evidence that my biological father was murdered 25 years ago for pharmaceutical patents worth $800 million. Patents that built the fortune Richard Lawson married into. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Everyone knew Victoria Lawson's pharmaceutical empire had made the family untouchable. What they didn't know was where those life-saving drug formulas originally came from. Richard's memory flashed to 6 months earlier, Maya's hands on his chest, her body pressed against his in moments when she'd made him forget everything except how badly he wanted her. The way she'd looked at him like he was her salvation instead of her destruction. He'd been so sure he was in control. The woman you've been calling his mistress, the judge said slowly, reading from documents that had just changed hands, is actually the sole heir to Robinson Pharmaceuticals. The daughter of Dr. Marcus Robinson. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Marcus Robinson's mysterious death had been Atlanta gossip for decades. The brilliant scientist who died in a convenient car accident just before his groundbreaking patents were transferred to his business partner's widow. Maya lifted her chin, meeting Richard's shocked stare across the courtroom. For months, he believed she was his to use and discard. A beautiful distraction from his cold marriage to Victoria. Someone who needed him more than he needed her. The betrayal cut deeper than money or business. It was personal. It was about trust, desire, and the kind of intimate moments that made people believe they knew each other's souls. But as Maya revealed bank statements, DNA tests, and a will signed in New York that predated Victoria's marriage, everyone realized the truth. Richard's disposable mistress owned everything he thought was his. The courtroom wasn't just deciding his guilt. It was exposing the lie that held his entire world together. Have you ever discovered someone you loved was living a double life? That every intimate moment, every whispered promise, was built on deception? Drop your honest answer below, because this story will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. As Maya placed the final document on the judge's desk, a sealed envelope marked DNA evidence, Richard's attorney whispered something that made his face go white. The woman he thought he knew was about to prove she owned more than his heart. She owned his entire empire, and the contents of that envelope would either destroy her or crown her as the rightful heir to a fortune built on her family's blood. 6 months earlier, she walked into his charity gala like she belonged there, not knowing she was about to meet the man who would either save her or destroy her completely. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and George's power players, but Richard couldn't look away from the woman in scrubs who'd rushed straight from her shift to serve dinner to homeless veterans. While other guests sipped champagne and wrote tax-deductible checks, this woman knelt beside wheelchairs, checking blood pressure and administering medications she'd brought from her own supplies. Maya Robinson had no idea she was being watched. No idea that the man studying her every move was Richard Lawson, the same Richard Lawson whose wife's pharmaceutical company had destroyed her family 3 years ago. She was beautiful in a way that made expensive jewelry look cheap, natural curves that designer gowns couldn't improve, dark skin that glowed under the ballroom lights. But it was her hands that held Richard captive, gentle, skilled hands that touched each veteran like they mattered, like their dignity was worth more than the donations being pledged around them. Most people here tonight wrote a check and called it compassion, Maya said to the elderly man whose insulin she was adjusting. She hadn't noticed Richard approaching behind her. "What's your excuse for actually showing up?" Richard smiled, crouching beside her. "Maybe I want to see what real charity looks like." When Maya turned to face him, something electric shot between them. He was close enough to smell her perfume, something subtle and warm that mixed with the clinical scent of the medical supplies she carried. Close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes from pulling double shifts to fund her volunteer work. "You're not what I expected," she admitted, studying his face. Most wealthy men at these events kept their distance from the actual work. They posed for photos and disappeared early. But here was someone in a $1,000 suit, helping her carry boxes of donated wheelchairs. "Neither are you," Richard replied, their fingers brushing as he handed her a blood pressure cuff. The contact lasted longer than necessary, both of them feeling the charge that made the air between them thick with possibility. Maya had built walls around herself after losing everything. Her parents dead, her mother's insurance claim denied by corporate greed, medical school abandoned when the bills became impossible. She learned to keep people at arm's length, especially men who looked like they could afford to break hearts without consequences. But something about Richard felt different. The way he listened when she talked about healthcare and equality. The way he rolled up his sleeves and actually helped instead of just watching. The way his eyes stayed on her face when she spoke, like her words mattered more than her appearance. "I run a foundation that funds medical clinics in underserved communities," Richard said as they packed up supplies at the end of the night. "We could use someone with your passion and your expertise." Maya's guard went up instantly. She'd heard promises before. Men who wanted to help her career in exchange for things she wasn't willing to give. "I'm not looking for charity." "Good, because I'm not offering any. I'm offering a job, fair salary, full benefits, and the chance to actually change lives instead of just treating symptoms." The offer was too good, too convenient, too perfectly tailored to everything she'd ever wanted. Smart women didn't trust perfect opportunities that fell into their laps at charity galas. But when Richard handed her his business card, their fingers touched again, and Maya felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. The dangerous kind that made you want to believe in second chances and fairy tale endings. "Think about it," he said, his voice dropping to that low register that made her skin warm despite the ballroom's air conditioning. "We're building something important, something that could help people like your—" He paused, realizing he'd almost revealed knowledge he shouldn't have. People who need it most. Maya's medical bag slipped from her hands, supplies scattering across the marble floor. She hadn't told him about her mother, hadn't mentioned the insurance claim that drove her family into poverty, hadn't shared the personal tragedy that motivated her volunteer work. So how did Richard Lawson know? As she knelt to collect her scattered medical supplies, Maya's mind raced. Richard was already helping her, his expensive suit jacket brushing against her scrubs as they worked side by side. But now his kindness felt calculated. His interest seemed rehearsed. When she looked up at him, really looked, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Recognition. He knew exactly who she was. Have you ever met someone and instantly felt like they could change your life? That electric moment when possibility hangs in the air like a promise? Tell me about that feeling in the comments below, because Maya was about to learn that some chances are too good to be true. Richard Lawson wasn't just any donor. He was the married man whose wife's pharmaceutical company had refused her mother's insurance claim 3 years ago. The same claim denial that led to her mother's death from ration medications she couldn't afford. Maya had spent 3 years hating the Lawson name. Now she was holding his business card, feeling his touch burn against her skin, and realizing that fate had just delivered her mother's killer on a silver platter wrapped in charm and false promises. Revenge was the last thing on her mind when she said yes to dinner, until she realized fate had delivered her mother's killer on a silver platter. The private dining room overlooked Atlanta's skyline, city lights reflecting off windows like stars she'd once wished on as a poor kid in Baltimore, back when dreams seemed impossible. Richard had chosen this place carefully, intimate enough for confession, public enough to feel safe. He had no idea Maya was conducting her own investigation. 3 days had passed since the charity gala. 3 days of Maya staring at Richard's business card while researching his wife's pharmaceutical empire. Victoria Lawson's company had built its fortune on life-saving drugs that somehow bore striking similarities to her late father's research. Research that had mysteriously disappeared after Dr. Marcus Robinson's accidental death 25 years ago. Now Maya sat across from the man whose family had destroyed hers, watching him pour wine like he was courting her instead of covering up murder. "Tell me about yourself," Richard said, his eyes intense in the candlelight. "And don't give me the polite version. I want the real Maya Robinson." The irony wasn't lost on her. He was asking for truth while living a lie that stretched back decades. But Maya had learned to play games with men who underestimated her intelligence. "I grew up believing hard work was enough," she said, letting vulnerability creep into her voice. That if you followed the rules and trusted the system, everything would work out. Richard leaned forward, clearly enjoying what he thought was her naive confession. "What changed your mind?" Maya's fingers tightened on her wine glass. This was the moment to tell him about her mother. About the insurance claim his wife's company had denied. About watching someone die from ration medications while pharmaceutical executives bought yacht parties. Instead, she smiled. "Someone I trusted broke that trust. Made me realize the world isn't fair to people like me. People like you, people who come from nothing, who don't have connections or family money or the right last name to open doors." Richard's hand moved across the table, covering hers. The contact sent heat shooting up her arm, and Maya hated herself for responding to his touch. But she needed him to want her. Need her. Trust her enough to reveal the secrets that would bring down his empire. "I come from nothing too," Richard said, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. "My family lost everything when I was 12. Foreclosure, bankruptcy, the whole nightmare. Everything I have now, I built from scratch." Maya almost believed him. The pain in his eyes looked genuine. The vulnerability in his voice sounded real. But she'd researched his background. Richard Lawson had married into wealth, not earned it. His wife's pharmaceutical fortune had made him powerful, not his own merit. "How did you meet your wife?" Maya asked, testing him. Richard's jaw tightened. "Victoria and I, it's complicated. We married young. For practical reasons more than love." "Practical reasons?" "Her father needed someone to run the business side of his company. I needed security. It was mutually beneficial." Maya felt sick. He was describing her parents' murder like a business transaction. Dr. Marcus Robinson hadn't just been Victoria's father's business partner. He'd been the brilliant scientist whose formulas had built their empire. Formulas that were stolen along with his life. "What kind of business?" Maya pressed, letting her leg brush against his under the table. She watched his pupils dilate, knowing physical attraction was clouding his judgment. "Pharmaceuticals. Life-saving medications. We help people who can't afford treatment." The lie was so brazen Maya almost choked on her wine. Victoria Lawson's company was notorious for price gouging essential medications. People died because they couldn't afford insulin that cost pennies to produce but sold for hundreds of dollars per dose. Richard's phone buzzed with a text message. As he read it, his expression changed completely. "Everything okay?" Maya asked. "My wife. She's suspicious about us working together." "Are we just working together?" The question hung between them like a loaded weapon. Maya needed to know how far Richard was willing to go. How much he'd risk for the woman he thought was just another charity case he could manipulate. Richard stood up, moving around the table until he was beside her chair. His hand touched her shoulder, fingers trailing down her arm. "What do you think?" Maya turned to face him, close enough to feel his breath against her lips. This was the moment. The point where she'd either run like a smart woman or stay and play a dangerous game with the killer. "I think you're married," she whispered. "I think this is complicated. And I think you're not telling me everything." "Neither are you," Richard replied, his voice dropping to that low register that made her skin warm despite her anger. "I can see it in your eyes. You're hiding something too. If only he knew." Richard leaned closer, his lips almost touching hers. Maya could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. Part of her wanted to give in to the attraction, to forget about justice and revenge, and just let herself feel wanted by someone powerful enough to change her life. But then her phone buzzed with a text from a private investigator. "Found the documents. Your mother's death wasn't just insurance fraud. It was murder. And your father isn't who your birth certificate says he is. Tell me something real about yourself," Richard demanded, wine making him bold. Maya's smile held secrets as she pulled back from his almost kiss. "I'm not who you think I am, Richard. But then again, neither are you. What would you do if you had the chance to make someone pay for destroying your family, but you started falling for them? If attraction fought against justice in your heart?" Share your choice in the comments, because Maya's next decision would change everything. As Richard finally leaned in for their first kiss, Maya's phone buzzed again. This time a message from her investigator made her blood freeze. "Your DNA test results are in. Dr. Marcus Robinson wasn't just your father's business partner. He was your father. You're not just seeking revenge. You're the rightful heir to everything Richard thinks he owns." The DNA test results didn't just reveal her father's identity. They revealed why Richard's family had been trying to kill her bloodline for decades. Maya stared at the documents spread across her tiny Baltimore apartment table. Birth certificates, patent filings, death certificates, insurance policies. 25 years of evidence that painted a picture of corporate murder disguised as business partnerships. Dr. Marcus Robinson hadn't just been Victoria's father's business partner. He'd been the genius behind every breakthrough that built the Lawson pharmaceutical empire. And Maya wasn't just his admirer or student, she was his daughter. The sole heir to patents worth $800 million. Patents that were stolen the night her father died in a car accident that was starting to look less and less accidental. Her phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen, and Maya's stomach tightened with a mixture of desire and rage. 3 weeks had passed since their almost kiss at dinner. 3 weeks of careful seduction as she got closer to the man who'd unknowingly built his fortune on her family's blood. "I've been thinking about you." Richard's voice was warm through the phone, intimate in a way that made Maya close her eyes despite herself. "Have you?" she replied, packing the documents into a hidden folder. She couldn't let emotion cloud her judgment now, not when she was so close to the truth. "There's something I want to show you. Can you meet me at my office tonight? After hours?" Maya's heart raced. An empty office meant privacy. Privacy meant opportunity to search for more evidence. It also meant being alone with a man who made her forget why she hated his family name. "What kind of something?" she asked, letting curiosity color her voice. "The real reason I started the foundation. The real reason I wanted to work with you." 2 hours later, Maya stood in the elevator of Richard's downtown Atlanta building, watching the floors climb toward the penthouse offices. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the hidden recording device in her purse. Tonight would either give her the evidence she needed to destroy him, or it would destroy her completely. The elevator doors opened to reveal Richard waiting in the hallway. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. The corporate armor was gone, replaced by something more vulnerable, more human. "Thank you for coming," he said, leading her toward his office. "I know this is complicated. Because you're married? Because I can't stop thinking about you." Maya's breath caught as he opened his office door. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Atlanta's glittering skyline. But what caught her attention were the medical journals and research papers covering his desk. Her father's research papers. "Richard, what is all this?" He moved behind her, close enough that she could feel his body heat. "My wife's company built its success on stolen formulas. I've been trying to prove it for years." Maya spun around to face him. This wasn't what she'd expected. "What are you talking about?" "Dr. Marcus Robinson. Your father." Richard's eyes searched her face. "Yes, I know who you are. I've known since the charity gala." The world tilted on its axis. Maya gripped his desk to steady herself. "Ow! Because I've been investigating his murder for 15 years. Ever since I discovered Victoria's father didn't actually develop the drugs that made their fortune." Richard moved to his computer, pulling up files that made Maya's heart stop. Photos of her father, patent documents in his handwriting, insurance policies that had been altered after his death. "Your father was brilliant," Richard continued. "He developed breakthrough treatments for diabetes, heart disease, cancer. Formulas that could have saved millions of lives at affordable prices. But Victoria's father wanted exclusive control. So they killed him," Maya whispered, "and made it look like an accident. Then they altered the patents, claiming Dr. Robinson had assigned them all research rights before his death. The insurance money went to his business partner's family. Your inheritance disappeared." Maya sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the confirmation of everything she'd suspected. "Why are you telling me this?" Richard knelt beside her chair, his hands covering hers. "Because I fell in love with you before I knew the plan. Because every day since that gala, I've been trying to find a way to give you justice without losing you." The confession hung between them like a live wire. Maya looked into his eyes and saw something that terrified her more than his family's crimes. She saw genuine emotion, real regret, the kind of vulnerability that made her want to believe in redemption. "What plan?" she asked. "Victoria knows who you are. She's known for months. This whole thing, the foundation, the job offer, our relationship, she orchestrated all of it." Maya's blood went cold. "What are you saying?" "She wanted to keep you close, monitor you, make sure you never discovered the truth about your inheritance." Richard's grip on her hands tightened. "But I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't use you like that." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The too-perfect job offer, the immediate attraction, the convenient way Richard had appeared in her life just when she needed him most. "So you've been playing me this whole time," Maya said, her voice deadly quiet. "No. Yes. At first." Richard stood, running his hands through his hair. "Maya, I swear to you, what I feel for you is real. The plan was never supposed to include falling in love." Maya stood too, backing toward the door. But Richard stepped between her and escape, his body close enough to touch. Close enough to remember how his hands felt on her skin. "Prove it," she whispered. "Ow! Help me destroy them. Your wife, her company, all of it. Help me take back what's mine." Richard's eyes darkened with something that looked like desire mixed with desperation. "If we do this, there's no going back. Victoria will come after both of us. Then we'd better make sure we get her first." The kiss that followed was nothing like their gentle moment at dinner. This was fierce, hungry, full of anger and attraction that had been building for weeks. Richard pressed Maya against his office door, his hands tangling in her hair as she pulled him closer. "Are you sure about this?" he breathed against her lips. "About destroying your wife's empire? Or about trusting you?" "Both." Maya looked into his eyes and made a choice that would change both their lives forever. "Yes." "What would you do if you discovered your lover's family had murdered yours for money? If the person you were falling for was supposed to be your enemy?" Share your thoughts below, because Maya's decision to trust Richard was either the smartest move she'd ever made, or would get them both killed. As they broke apart, Breathless and desperate, Maya's phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. Your half-sister is alive. Victoria has been holding her prisoner for 15 years. She's at Willowbrook Psychiatric Hospital outside Atlanta. Tonight's your only chance to save her. Richard's wife smiled at Maya across the charity luncheon table, her voice sweet as poison. I know exactly who you are, dear. The question is, does my husband? The country club's terrace overlooked manicured gardens where Atlanta's elite sipped champagne. Unaware, they were witnessing the opening moves of a war that would reshape the city's power structure. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she set down her teacup, but her voice stayed steady. I'm sorry, have we met? Victoria Lawson was everything Maya had expected and nothing like she'd imagined. Beautiful in the way that money could buy. Perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, skin that glowed with expensive treatments. But her eyes held a coldness that made the Georgia heat feel like winter. Not formally, but I've been watching you seduce my husband for months. Victoria's smile never wavered as she delivered the blow. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Maya's mind raced. This lunch invitation had come out of nowhere, Victoria's assistant calling to invite her to discuss potential collaboration between the foundation and Lawson Pharmaceuticals. It had seemed too good to be true. It was. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Maya said carefully. Richard and I work together. Nothing more. Victoria laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Oh, honey. I saw the security footage from his office 3 nights ago. The kissing, the touching, the way you looked at each other like you were ready to burn the world down together. Heat flooded Maya's cheeks, but she forced herself to maintain eye contact. What do you want? Now we're getting somewhere. Victoria leaned forward, lowering her voice so the other diners couldn't hear. I want you to understand the game you're playing. And more importantly, the rules. I'm not playing any game. Of course you are. The question is whether you know you're playing it. Victoria opened her purse, sliding a photograph across the table. Recognize this man? Maya's breath caught. The photo showed her father, Dr. Marcus Robinson, shaking hands with a younger version of Victoria's father outside what looked like a laboratory. That's my dad, Victoria said casually. And that's your father. Business partners. Best friends. Right up until the night my daddy put him in the ground. The world seemed to stop spinning. Maya gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling over. You're lying. Am I? Check the date on that photo. 6 months before your father's convenient car accident. 6 months before his brilliant research mysteriously became our family's fortune. Maya stared at the image, her vision blurring. Victoria wasn't just Richard's wife. She wasn't just the pharmaceutical heiress who'd built an empire on stolen drugs. She was her half-sister. Surprised? Victoria's voice held genuine amusement. Our fathers were partners in more ways than one. They shared research. They shared profits. And apparently, they shared women. That's impossible. DNA doesn't lie, darling. Neither do birth records, if you know where to look. Your mother wasn't some innocent nurse who fell for a brilliant scientist. She was my father's secretary, his mistress. And when she got pregnant with you, it threatened everything we'd built. Maya's hands shook as she processed the information. So you killed her too. Cancer did that all on its own. We just made sure she couldn't afford treatment. Insurance claim denials are so much cleaner than car accidents, don't you think? The casual cruelty in Victoria's voice made Maya's stomach turn. This woman had destroyed her entire family with the same enthusiasm she'd used to plan a dinner party. What do you want from me? Maya whispered. I want you to disappear. Take the money Richard's been so generously providing through his little foundation job and vanish. Go live your life somewhere far from Atlanta and never mention the Robinson name again. And if I don't, Victoria's smile turned predatory. Then you'll end up like your father, and your mother, and your sister. Maya's blood turned to ice. What sister? Oh, didn't you know? Marcus Robinson had 3 daughters, not just one. Your older half-sister Sarah tried to claim her inheritance 15 years ago. Poor thing suffered a complete mental breakdown. She's been receiving excellent psychiatric care ever since. The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. Victoria hadn't just stolen her inheritance. She'd been systematically eliminating Robinson heirs for decades. Where is she? Somewhere safe. Somewhere she can't cause any more trouble for the family business. Maya stood up so fast her chair fell over. Several nearby tables turned to look, but she didn't care. You psychopath. You can't just imprison people because they inconvenience you. Can I? Victoria remained seated, perfectly calm. Who's going to stop me? You? A little nurse from Baltimore with no money, no connections, and no proof of anything. Richard will. Richard will do exactly what I tell him to do, just like he's been doing for the past 6 months. Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What are you talking about? Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling to a text conversation. She held it up for Maya to read. Richard, she's getting suspicious. How long do I need to keep this up? Victoria, until we're sure she has no legal standing. Make her fall in love with you. Broken hearts are easier to manage than angry heirs. Richard, and if she discovers the truth? Victoria, then you'll help me make sure she can't use it. The messages were dated 2 weeks ago, 2 days after Maya had kissed Richard in his office, 2 days after she'd trusted him with her father's research. He's been playing you from the beginning, Victoria said gently, almost kindly. The job offer, the foundation work, the romantic dinners, all of it designed to keep you close while we figured out how to neutralize the threat you represent. Maya sank back in her chair, overwhelmed by betrayal that cut deeper than family secrets or stolen inheritances. Richard had made her feel seen, valued, desired. He'd made her believe in fairy tale endings and second chances. It had all been a lie. Now, Victoria continued, you have a choice. Take the money and disappear, or join your sister in psychiatric care. What's it going to be? Have you ever realized you were being played by someone you completely underestimated? When the person you thought was harmless turned out to be the real threat? Tell me in the comments how you'd handle discovering your enemy was actually family, because Maya's next move would determine whether she lived free or died trying. Maya looked across the table at her half-sister, the woman who destroyed her life before they'd ever met. But as Victoria waited for her answer, Maya smiled. It was a smile that held secrets and promises of destruction. You know what, Victoria? You made one mistake in all your careful planning. What's that? Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of 25 years of hidden rage. You assumed I came here to play defense. But I've been planning your destruction since I was 12 years old, and I know something about our family that you don't. Victoria's confident expression flickered for just a moment. What are you talking about? Maya stood again, this time with perfect control. Ask Richard about the safety deposit box. Ask him about the documents I've been collecting since before I ever met him. And ask yourself why a smart woman like me would walk into your trap without setting one of my own. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victoria, that psychiatric facility where you're holding our sister? I already know where it is. And unlike you, I actually read Dad's will. The real one. The one he filed in New York 3 days before he died. As Maya walked away, she heard Victoria's chair scrape against the stone terrace. But she didn't look back. She had a sister to save and an empire to burn down. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Where are you? We need to talk. Victoria knows about us. Maya smiled as she typed back. She always did. But now I know about her too. Meet me tonight. It's time to choose sides. When you discover the man you love orchestrated your mother's death, do you run or do you make him pay in the sweetest way possible? Rain hammered Richard's penthouse windows as accusations flew between them, lightning illuminating their faces in harsh black and white, truth and deception battling for dominance in the space where they'd once shared intimate moments. You knew, Maya said, her voice deadly calm as she stood in his living room, water dripping from her coat onto his expensive marble floor. You knew who I was from the first night we met. Richard loosened his tie with shaking hands, his perfect composure finally cracking. Maya, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months. How every kiss, every touch, every moment I thought was real was just you following Victoria's orders. It wasn't like that. Maya laughed, but the sound held no warmth. Really? Because I have text messages that say otherwise. I have proof that you've been playing me since day one. Richard moved toward her, but Maya stepped back, keeping distance between them. The space felt charged with electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Yes, I knew who you were, he admitted. Victoria told me to get close to you, to make you trust me, to keep you distracted while she figured out how to handle the inheritance situation. And you just went along with it, like a good husband. At first, yes. But Maya, I swear to you, everything changed the moment I actually met you. The moment I saw you helping those veterans at the charity gala. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. So what? You expect me to believe you had some kind of romantic awakening? That you suddenly grew a conscience? Richard ran his hands through his hair, his usual control completely gone. I expect you to believe that I fell in love with you. Really, genuinely fell in love with you. And that's been tearing me apart for months. Love. Maya's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You don't know what love is. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't help cover up murder. I never helped cover up murder. Your wife killed my parents. Your wife stole my inheritance. Your wife is holding my sister prisoner. And you've been helping her keep me distracted while she destroys what's left of my family. The words hung between them like weapons. Richard's face went white as he processed what Maya had just revealed. What sister? Sarah Robinson. My half-sister who tried to claim her inheritance 15 years ago. Victoria had her committed to a psychiatric hospital to keep her quiet. Did you know about that too? Richard's expression shifted from guilt to genuine shock. No, Maya, I swear I didn't know Victoria had. Stop lying to me. Maya's composure finally shattered. Just stop. I can't tell what's real anymore. I can't tell if anything you've ever said to me was true. Richard closed the distance between them in 2 quick steps, his hands framing her face before she could pull away. This is real. What I feel for you is real. Maya, you have to believe me. She wanted to. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Prove it, she whispered, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Ow, help me save Sarah. Help me destroy Victoria's empire. Help me take back everything she stole from my family. Richard's hands dropped from her face. Maya, you don't understand what you're asking. Victoria isn't just my wife. She's dangerous. She's killed people who threatened her business. I know exactly how dangerous she is. The question is whether you're brave enough to stand against her. Thunder crashed outside as Richard wrestled with the choice that would define the rest of his life. Stay loyal to the woman who'd given him wealth and status, or trust the woman who'd given him something he'd never expected to find, real love. If I do this, he said slowly, there's no going back. Victoria will come after both of us. Then we'd better make sure we get her first. Maya moved closer, her body almost touching his. She could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the conflict in his eyes as desire fought against self-preservation. I need to know you're really with me, she said, her voice soft but determined. Not playing another game, not following someone else's orders. Really with me. Richard's eyes darkened as he understood what she was asking. Maya, show me. The kiss that followed was desperate, hungry, full of months of suppressed emotion finally breaking free. Richard backed Maya against his floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights of Atlanta spread out below them like a galaxy of possibilities. But this wasn't the gentle seduction of their early encounters. This was raw need mixed with anger and fear and the kind of passion that comes from knowing you might not survive what comes next. Are you sure? Richard breathed against her neck as his hands found the zipper of her dress. I've never been more sure of anything. They made love against the windows with the storm raging outside, their bodies moving together with an urgency born of desperation and desire. Maya let herself get lost in the feeling of his hands on her skin, his mouth claiming hers like he was drowning and she was air. For those moments, the lies and betrayals faded away. There was only heat and need and the electric connection that had drawn them together from the very beginning. Afterward, as they lay tangled on his couch, Richard traced patterns on Maya's bare shoulder. I meant what I said, he whispered. about loving you, about choosing you over her. Maya turned in his arms, studying his face in the dim light. Then prove it tomorrow. Help me get Sarah out of that hospital. And then we burn Victoria's world to the ground. When someone proves their love through sacrifice, does it erase their previous betrayals? Can passion really overcome the need for justice? Tell me in the comments what you'd do if your heart and your head were at war, because Maya was about to discover that some choices change everything. As they drifted toward sleep, Maya's phone lit up with a message that made her blood freeze. You have 24 hours to leave Atlanta, or your boyfriend takes a bullet. Some sisters don't share their toys. But it was Richard's response that truly scared her. Instead of fear, she saw something cold and calculating across his features. She made a mistake threatening you, he said quietly. Now it's personal. She thought she was the last Robinson alive, until she followed Victoria's limousine to a psychiatric facility where family members don't die. They just disappear. The Willowbrook private care facility sat hidden behind Georgia pines like a secret shame, its windows barred not to keep patients safe, but to keep secrets buried under the pretense of mental health treatment. Maya crouched behind a maintenance shed, watching Victoria's black Mercedes pull through the security gates for her weekly inspection. Richard squeezed Maya's hand. 24 hours had passed since Victoria's threat, and instead of running, they'd spent the time planning something that could get them both killed. You sure about this? He whispered. Maya's jaw was set with determination that reminded him why he'd fallen for her in the first place. That's my sister in there. I'm not leaving without her. The plan was simple in theory, deadly in execution. Richard would use his access as Victoria's husband to get them inside during shift change. Maya would locate Sarah while he created a distraction. They'd have maybe 20 minutes before security noticed anything wrong. 20 minutes to save a life and gather evidence of Victoria's crimes. The facility's lobby smelled like disinfectant and despair. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while patients in hospital gowns shuffled past like ghosts of the people they used to be. Maya's heart broke thinking of her sister, trapped in this place for 15 years. Mr. Lawson, the receptionist smiled nervously. We weren't expecting you today. Last-minute visit, Richard replied smoothly. My wife asked me to check on a few things. The woman didn't question him. Money bought access and silence in places like this. They walked down corridors lined with locked doors, each one hiding someone's broken dreams. Maya fought the urge to run. The institutional smell reminded her too much of the hospital where her mother had died, rationing medications because Victoria's company had denied their insurance claims. Room 247, Richard murmured, pointing down a hallway marked long-term care. Maya's hands shook as they approached the door. Behind that steel barrier was the sister she'd never known existed, the family member who could help her understand her father's true legacy. Richard kept watch while Maya used the key card he'd lifted from the nurse's station. The lock clicked open, and Maya stepped into a small room that looked more like a prison cell than a medical facility. The woman sitting by the window was thin, pale, with dark hair streaked with premature gray. But her eyes were sharp and aware, not the vacant stare of someone lost to mental illness. Sarah, Maya whispered. The woman turned slowly, studying Maya's face with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Then Sarah smiled, and Maya saw their father's features reflected in her expression. You look just like him, Sarah said, her voice hoarse from years of forced medication. Like Daddy. Maya's throat tightened with emotion. You remember him? I remember everything. That's why they keep me drugged. Can't have the Robinson heir running around with a clear head, can they? Sarah stood up, moving with surprising steadiness for someone who'd been institutionalized for 15 years. You're Maya, the baby sister I never got to meet. How did you know? Because I've been watching. Waiting. Victoria thinks these drugs make me stupid, but I've been pretending to take them for years. Saving my strength for when one of my sisters finally came to find me. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Sisters, there are 3 of us. You, me, and the bitch who's been holding me prisoner. Sarah's voice hardened. Victoria is our half-sister. Daddy had an affair with her mother before he met yours. She's the oldest, which is why she thinks she deserves everything. The family dynamics were more twisted than Maya had imagined. 3 daughters, all competing for an inheritance that should have been shared. But Victoria had chosen murder and imprisonment over sharing. "We need to get you out of here," Maya said urgently. "I'm not going anywhere without proof of what she's done." Sarah moved to her small desk, pulling out a loose floorboard. Hidden underneath were dozens of documents, medical records showing forced treatments, legal papers proving Victoria's guardianship was obtained through fraud, and most importantly, financial records showing patients' trust funds being drained into Victoria's personal accounts. "She's been stealing from everyone here," Sarah explained. "Rich families pay millions to keep their embarrassing relatives hidden away. Victoria takes their money and keeps them drugged so they can't complain." Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Security doing rounds early. We need to go now. Can you walk?" Maya asked Sarah. "I can run if I need to." They stuffed the documents into Maya's purse and headed for the door. But as they stepped into the hallway, alarm bells started ringing throughout the facility. "Shit," Maya muttered. "They know we're here." Richard appeared at the end of the corridor, his face grim. "Victoria's here. She came early for her visit. We're trapped." Sarah grabbed Maya's arm with surprising strength. "There's another way out. The old service tunnel from the basement. It leads to the woods behind the building." They could hear voices and footsteps echoing through the halls as security searched for them. Victoria's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Find them. And make sure my dear sister Sarah doesn't leave this building alive." Maya, Richard, and Sarah ran down a back stairwell toward the basement, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. "This way," Sarah whispered, leading them through a maze of storage rooms and maintenance areas. For someone who'd been in prison for 15 years, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd memorized every inch of her prison. They reached a rusty door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Sarah produced a key from her pocket. "How did you?" Maya started to ask. 15 years is a long time to plan an escape. I just needed someone to help me execute it." The door opened onto a narrow tunnel that smelled like earth and decay. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls as they crawled through what felt like their own grave. Behind them, they could hear Victoria's voice getting closer. "Check the basement. Check everywhere. They can't have gotten far. Have you ever realized that your family's secrets ran deeper than you ever imagined? That the people you thought you knew were strangers hiding in plain sight?" Share your story in the comments, because Maya was about to learn that some family reunions come with a body count. They emerged from the tunnel in the woods behind the facility, gasping for air and covered in dirt. But they weren't safe yet. Through the trees, they could see flashlights searching the grounds. "We need to get to the car," Richard said. But Sarah grabbed Maya's arm, her grip desperate. "Wait, there's something you need to know about him." Her eyes fixed on Richard with an intensity that made Maya's blood run cold. "He's not trying to save you. He's completing what Victoria started. Our father had 3 daughters, not 2. The third one died in a car accident 20 years ago. Her name was Jennifer, and Richard was driving the car." Maya's world tilted on its axis as she stared at the man she'd trusted with her life. "Is that true?" Richard's silence was answer enough. The woman Maya thought was her enemy turned out to be her sister, and the man she loved had been helping Victoria eliminate their bloodline one family member at a time. The abandoned Robinson family estate stood like a monument to betrayal, its grand columns crumbling under the weight of secrets that had festered for decades. Maya sat in what used to be the parlor, staring at Richard across a room filled with dust and broken dreams. Sarah had insisted they come here after escaping the psychiatric facility. "This is where it all started," she'd said. "This is where it needs to end." Now Maya understood why. Every inch of this place screamed their father's name. Family photos lined the mantelpiece, showing Dr. Marcus Robinson in happier times, before corporate greed and family betrayal destroyed everything he'd built. "Tell me about Jennifer," Maya said, her voice echoing in the empty room. Richard sat slumped in a chair that had once been elegant, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked like shame. She was Victoria's younger sister. Your half-sister. She discovered the truth about your father's murder and was planning to expose everything. So Victoria had her killed. Victoria arranged for her to be in a specific place at a specific time. I was supposed to scare her, make her back down from her investigation. Maya felt sick, but something went wrong. The brakes failed, or maybe they were cut. I never knew for sure. Jennifer died instantly, and I've been living with that guilt for 20 years. Sarah emerged from the shadows where she'd been listening. Despite 15 years of imprisonment and forced medication, she moved with a predator's grace that reminded Maya of Victoria. Guilt. Sarah laughed bitterly. You think guilt makes up for murder? I never meant for her to die, Richard protested. Neither did the drunk driver who killed our mother, Maya said quietly. But intention doesn't bring back the dead. The three of them sat in silence, surrounded by the ghosts of their shared history. Three people bound together by blood, betrayal, and the kind of trauma that either destroys you or makes you dangerous. So what now? Richard asked. Victoria knows we have Sarah. She knows we have the documents. She'll be coming for all of us. Sarah smiled, and for the first time, Maya saw the family resemblance between her sister and Victoria. The same cold calculation, the same willingness to do whatever it took to survive. Let her come, Sarah said. I've been planning her destruction for 15 years. I know every one of her secrets, every crime she's covered up, every person she's hurt. She made a mistake keeping me alive this long. Maya studied her sister's face, seeing something that made her nervous. What kind of secrets? The kind that could put her in prison for life, or get her killed by the families of people she's murdered. Sarah produced a manila envelope from her jacket. More documents she'd hidden from the psychiatric facility. Victoria didn't just kill our father and Jennifer. She's been systematically eliminating anyone who threatens her empire for 25 years. Business partners who asked too many questions. Government inspectors who got too close to the truth. Even her own husband. Maya's blood went cold. Her own husband, Victoria's first husband, the one before Richard. He discovered she was inflating drug prices and letting people die to increase profits. His death was ruled a heart attack, but I have medical records showing traces of digitalis in his system. Richard's face went pale. She poisoned him and made it look natural, just like she's been planning to do to you once Maya was out of the picture. Maya felt the room spin around her. What are you talking about? Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Did you really think Victoria married Richard for love? She needed someone to run the business side of her empire while she handled the wet work. But husbands are replaceable, especially ones who start developing inconvenient consciences. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Richard hadn't just been manipulating her. He'd been a target all along. Victoria had been playing a longer game than any of them realized. Why are you telling us this? Maya asked. Because I want her to suffer before she dies. And I want her to know that her baby sisters are the ones who brought her down. Sarah moved to the fireplace, where a portrait of their father hung askew. Behind it was a hidden safe that clicked open at her touch. Daddy was paranoid about Victoria even before she killed him. He left insurance policies, evidence, proof of everything she's done. The safe contained dozens of files, police reports, autopsy records, financial statements, recorded phone conversations. 25 years of evidence that Victoria was a serial killer masquerading as a pharmaceutical executive. This is enough to destroy her, Maya breathed. Destroying her isn't enough, Sarah replied. She needs to pay for every life she's taken. Every family she's destroyed. Every child who died because they couldn't afford medications she inflated to fund her lifestyle. Richard stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. What are you proposing? That we just hand this over to the police and hope they arrest her? Sarah's laugh was cold as winter. The police are in her pocket. Half the judges in Atlanta owe their careers to Victoria's campaign contributions. The legal system won't touch her. Then what? Maya understood before Richard did. She could see it in Sarah's eyes, the same calculation that had kept her alive for 15 years in a psychiatric prison. The same ruthlessness that ran in their family's blood. You want to kill her, Maya said quietly. I want justice. If that requires killing, then so be it. The room fell silent except for the sound of rain beginning to fall outside. Maya looked between her sister and the man she'd fallen in love with, realizing that both of them were more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. There has to be another way, Maya said. Like what? Sarah challenged. Let her keep destroying families? Let her keep profiting from other people's pain? Let her keep getting away with murder? Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. Family reunion at the old house? How touching. But you forgot to invite me. I'll be there in an hour. Come alone or Richard dies first. The message was followed by a photo that made Maya's heart stop. Victoria standing behind Richard's car in the psychiatric facility parking lot, a small device in her hand. She put a bomb in your car, Maya realized. Richard's face went white. How do you know? Because that's what she did to Jennifer. That's what she did to our father. Car accidents are her specialty. Sarah moved to the window, peering through broken blinds of the driveway outside. She's not coming alone. I can see 3 cars approaching. Maya felt trapped between her sister's thirst for vengeance and her own desire for justice. But as the sound of car doors slamming echoed through the night, she realized they were out of options. What would you do if you had to choose between law and justice? Between doing what's right and doing what's legal? Share your answer in the comments, because Maya was about to make a choice that would define the rest of her life. Sarah pulled a gun from her jacket. Where had she been hiding that? And checked the clip with practiced efficiency. She's here. Time to finish what her father started. But as headlights swept across the broken windows of the Robinson estate, Maya saw something that changed everything. The lead car wasn't Victoria's Mercedes. It was a police cruiser, followed by 2 unmarked sedans. Someone call the cops, Richard said. Sarah smiled grimly. I did. About an hour ago. Anonymous tip about drug trafficking and murder at the old Robinson place. Maya stared at her sister in shock. You set us up. I set her up. Victoria thinks she's walking into a trap she controls. Instead, she's walking into one I've been building for 15 years. The sound of footsteps on the front porch made them all freeze. But the voice that called out wasn't Victoria's. This is the Atlanta Police Department. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. He took a bullet meant for her. Not because he was innocent, but because love sometimes means choosing to die for the right reasons. The blue and red lights painted the Robinson estate in colors of emergency and chaos as police surrounded the crumbling mansion. Maya pressed herself against the broken window frame, watching officers take positions behind their vehicles. This is your fault, Richard said to Sarah, his voice tight with anger. You called him here. Sarah's grip tightened on her gun. I called him here for Victoria, not for us. You think they're going to make that distinction when they find us armed in an abandoned house? Maya's mind raced. They had evidence of Victoria's crimes, but they also looked like the criminals themselves. Escaped psychiatric patient, adulterous businessman, and a woman with revenge burning in her eyes. A megaphone crackled to life outside. We know you're in there. Come out slowly with your hands visible. No one needs to get hurt. What do we do? Maya whispered. Before anyone could answer, they heard the sound of another car arriving. Through the broken blinds, Maya could see Victoria's black Mercedes pulling up behind the police cars. Victoria stepped out like she was arriving at a charity gala instead of a crime scene. Perfect hair, designer dress, the kind of composed smile that made people trust her with their lives and their money. Maya watched her sister approach the police commander, saw them shake hands like old friends. Whatever Victoria was telling them, it was working. The cops were nodding, listening, treating her like a concerned family member instead of a suspect. She's spinning the story, Maya realized, making herself the victim. Sarah moved to another window, tracking Victoria's movements. 25 years of political donations and charity events. Half these cops probably owe their promotions to her influence. So what's her play? Richard asked. She tells them we're dangerous. That Maya kidnapped me from the psychiatric facility. That you're helping us because we've brainwashed you or threatened you. She positions herself as the concerned family member trying to save her mentally ill sister. Maya felt the trap closing around them. Victoria had always been 3 steps ahead, always planning for contingencies. Even now, surrounded by police, she was controlling the narrative. The megaphone crackled again. Mrs. Lawson has informed us that there may be hostages inside. We're here to help. Just come out peacefully and we can sort this out. Hostages. Victoria had just painted Richard as Maya's victim instead of her accomplice. We need those documents, Maya said urgently. The evidence Sarah took from the facility. If we can get them to the right people. You think evidence matters when the system is corrupt? Sarah interrupted. You think paperwork will bring down someone who's been buying judges and police commissioners for decades? Then what's your solution? A shootout? Getting us all killed? Sarah's smile was cold as ice. Getting her killed and making it look like self-defense. The plan was insane. Sarah wanted to force a confrontation, make Victoria come inside after them. In the confusion of a struggle, accidents could happen. Guns could go off. The dangerous psychiatric patient could overpower the innocent pharmaceutical heiress, tragically resulting in death. That's murder, Maya said. That's justice, Sarah replied. Sometimes they're the same thing. Richard moved between the two sisters, his hands raised like he was trying to stop a war. There has to be another way. Maya, you're not a killer. Don't let your anger turn you into her. Maya looked at Richard, really looked at him. This man who'd lied to her, manipulated her, helped cover up her father's murder, but who'd also risked everything to save Sarah, who'd chosen love over loyalty to Victoria, who was now trying to keep her from crossing a line she couldn't uncross. You're right, Maya said quietly. I'm not a killer, but I'm also not going to let her destroy anyone else. She moved to the front window and called out, Victoria, I know you can hear me. Come inside. Let's finish this between sisters. The police commander's voice boomed back. Ma'am, step away from the window. We're here to help you. But Victoria's voice cut through the night air, clear and confident. It's okay, Commander. I'll go in and talk to them. They're family. They'll listen to me. Maya watched her half-sister approach the front door with the same grace she'd used entering a boardroom. Victoria knocked politely, like she was making a social call. May I come in? Sarah positioned herself behind the door, gun ready. Richard stood near the fireplace, tension radiating from every muscle. Maya took a deep breath and opened the door. Victoria looked exactly like what she was, a successful businesswoman concerned about her troubled family members. The picture of composed professionalism. Hello, Maya. Sarah. Victoria's eyes swept the room, taking in the scattered documents, the evidence of their father's murder. I see you've been playing with Daddy's old things. We know what you did, Maya said simply. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you broke a mentally ill woman out of psychiatric care and convinced my husband to help you commit crimes. Victoria moved further into the room, her back to Sarah. Maya realized her sister could take the shot now. In 25 years of murder and manipulation with one bullet. But Maya stepped between them. Sarah, don't. She killed our father. She killed Jennifer. She's destroyed dozens of families for profit. I know, but we're better than her. Victoria laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Better than me? You think you're heroes? You're thieves and kidnappers who've deluded themselves into thinking they're righteous. Maybe, Maya agreed. But we're not murderers. Aren't you? Victoria's hand moved to her purse, and Maya saw the flash of metal. But instead of drawing a gun, Victoria pulled out a syringe filled with clear liquid. Digitalis, Victoria said conversationally. The same thing I used on my first husband. Fast-acting, looks like a heart attack. Very hard to trace. The syringe was aimed at Maya, but Richard moved without thinking. He threw himself between them, just as Victoria's hand came down. The needle pierced his neck instead of Maya's arm. Victoria's eyes went wide with shock and rage as she realized her target had been switched. No! Maya screamed. Richard staggered, his hand going his neck where blood was already pooling around the injection site. Digitalis worked fast. It would stop his heart within minutes. Sarah finally took her shot, but Victoria was already moving. The bullet caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around, but not dropping her. The sound of gunfire brought police crashing through every door and window. Shouts filled the air as officers swarmed the room. but Maya only had eyes for Richard. He collapsed to his knees, his face already pale from the poison racing through his system. Maya caught him as he fell, cradling his head in her lap. "Why?" she whispered. Richard's voice was weak but steady. "Because I love you. Really love you. For the first time in my life. Don't talk. Save your strength." "Maya." His hand found hers, gripping with what little strength he had left. "The safe deposit box. Key is in my watch. Everything you need to destroy her empire. Promise me." "I promise." And Maya, his eyes were starting to lose focus. "Forgive me. For Jennifer. For your father. For all of it." Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she held the man who betrayed her and then died to save her. "I forgive you." Richard's last breath escaped as a whisper. "Tell them the truth about her. Don't let my death be meaningless." When someone proves their love through sacrifice, does it erase their previous sins? Can one moment of heroism redeem a lifetime of mistakes? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Maya was about to learn that some love stories end with bullets and poison, but the love itself never dies. As paramedics worked frantically over Richard's still body, Maya looked up to see Victoria being led away in handcuffs. Blood stained her designer dress from Sarah's bullet, but she was still smiling. "This isn't over," Victoria called out as police pushed her toward the door. "I have lawyers. I have judges. I have power you can't imagine." But Maya was already reaching for Richard's watch, feeling for the key that would unlock the evidence to destroy Victoria's empire forever. Her half-sister had made one fatal mistake. She'd let emotion override calculation. She tried to kill Maya personally instead of using one of her usual methods. Now Maya had witnesses. Police officers who'd seen Victoria inject Richard with poison. Evidence that couldn't be bought or buried or explained away. Victoria's 25-year killing spree was finally over. The safety deposit box contained either proof of Richard's innocence or evidence that would send Maya to prison for a crime she didn't know she'd committed. The bank vault's fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows as Maya's hands trembled over the metal box that would either free her or condemn her. 2 days had passed since Richard's death. 2 days of police questioning and media attention that painted her as either a victim or a villain, depending on which news channel you watched. Sarah sat beside her, finally free from 15 years of imprisonment, but looking older than her 38 years. The psychiatric drugs were slowly leaving her system, bringing clarity, but also the full weight of everything she'd endured. "You sure you want to do this?" Sarah asked. "Some secrets are buried for good reasons." Maya turned Richard's watch over in her hands, feeling the weight of his last words. The key was hidden in a compartment behind the face, so small and innocuous for something that might hold the answers to 25 years of family destruction. "I have to know the truth. All of it." The safety deposit box clicked open to reveal stacks of documents, photographs, and what looked like a thick legal brief. Maya's hand shook as she lifted the first folder. "Bank records," she murmured, scanning the pages. "Financial transfers dating back 25 years. But these weren't Victoria's accounts. They were Richard's. And every single transaction told a story Maya hadn't expected. Regular payments to a law firm in New York. Medical bills for a patient listed as J. Robinson. Insurance premiums for a life insurance policy with Maya listed as the beneficiary. "Sarah, look at this." Her sister leaned over, reading the financial statements with the sharp focus of someone who'd spent 15 years planning revenge. "He was paying for Jennifer's medical care." "What do you mean?" "Jennifer died in the car accident. Look at the dates. These payments started after the accident and continued for 20 years. Maya's blood turned to ice as she processed what she was seeing. Jennifer survived the car crash. The next folder contained medical records that confirmed her worst fears. Jennifer Robinson had been in a coma for 6 months after the accident, then spent 2 decades in a vegetative state at a private facility in upstate New York. Richard had been paying for her care the entire time. The payments had only stopped 2 years ago. The date of death listed on Jennifer's medical chart was exactly 2 years before Maya had met Richard at the charity gala. He was trying to make amends, Sarah said quietly, paying for her care out of guilt. But Maya was already opening the next folder, and what she found there made her stomach turn. Legal documents showing that Richard had been Jennifer's medical power of attorney. Hospital records showing that he'd authorized the withdrawal of life support. Richard hadn't just been paying for Jennifer's care. He'd ultimately decided to end it. "Oh God," Maya whispered. "He killed her twice." The final document in the box was a handwritten letter addressed to Maya in Richard's careful script. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, then I'm dead and you've discovered the truth about Jennifer. I need you to understand that everything I did out of love, first out of guilt and obligation, then out of genuine love for you. Jennifer never woke up from the coma. For 20 years, she existed in a state that wasn't living but wasn't death. The doctor said she felt no pain, had no awareness, no hope of recovery. I kept her alive out of guilt, not compassion. 2 years ago, I finally found the courage to let her go. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but also the most merciful. Jennifer died peacefully, surrounded by the nurses who had cared for her for 2 decades. I met you 3 months later. I want you to believe that was coincidence, but I can't be sure. Maybe some part of me was looking for redemption. Maybe I needed to save a Robinson daughter since I'd failed to save the others. But Maya, what grew between us was real. My feelings for you, my desire to help you reclaim what's yours, my willingness to stand against Victoria, all of that came from love, not guilt. The evidence in this box will destroy Victoria's empire. Use it. Get justice for your family. But please don't let my mistakes poison what we shared. I love you. I will always love you. Richard." Maya's hand shook as she set the letter down. Beside her, Sarah was going through financial records that painted an even more complex picture. "Maya, you need to see this." Sarah held up a bank statement showing a massive deposit into Maya's personal account. Money that had been transferred the day before Richard died. "I didn't authorize this," Maya said. "It's Jennifer's life insurance policy. Richard made you the beneficiary 20 years ago. When she died, the money went to you automatically." Maya stared at the number, $2. $3 million. Enough to fund the medical foundation she'd dreamed of building. Enough to help families like hers access health care without choosing between medicine and meals. He was trying to give you Jennifer's inheritance, Sarah realized. The money she would have used to fight Victoria if she'd lived. But there was more. Legal documents showing that Richard had been quietly gathering evidence against Victoria for years. Recorded phone calls where she admitted to price-fixing medications. Financial records showing she'd been embezzling from her own charity foundation. Medical files proving she'd been testing dangerous drug interactions on psychiatric patients without their consent. "This is enough to put her away for life," Maya breathed. "If we can get it to the right people," Sarah cautioned. "Victoria still has powerful friends. Judges who owe her favors. Politicians who depend on her campaign contributions." Maya's phone buzzed with a call from Detective Morrison, the lead investigator on Richard's murder case. "Ms. Robinson, we need to talk. Victoria Lawson made bail this morning." Maya's blood went cold. How is that possible? She murdered her husband in front of police officers. Her lawyers are claiming self-defense. They're saying Richard was holding you hostage, that she was trying to save you when the syringe accidentally injected him instead of you. That's ridiculous. We have witnesses. We have conflicting witness statements and a very expensive legal team spinning a narrative about mental illness, family tragedy, and a devoted wife trying to protect her husband's mistress from his violent breakdown. Maya felt the world tilt around her. Even with Richard dead, Victoria was still manipulating the system. "There's more," Detective Morrison continued. "They're filing charges against you. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping, theft of medical records, unlawful imprisonment of a psychiatric patient. If these charges stick, you could be looking at 20 years in prison." Maya hung up and turned to Sarah, who'd been listening to every word. "She's framing us," Maya said. "Of course she is. Victoria spent 25 years perfecting the art of making victims look like criminals. She's not going to stop now, just because she got caught once." Sarah stood up, pacing the small bank vault like a caged animal. "We need to get this evidence to someone who can't be bought. Someone with more power than Victoria's political connections. Like who? The FBI, federal prosecutors who specialize in corporate crime. People who've been trying to build cases against pharmaceutical companies for years. Maya looked at the evidence scattered across the table. Proof of murders, fraud, conspiracy, and corruption stretching back decades. Richard had died to give her this ammunition. She couldn't let Victoria's lawyers bury it in legal maneuvering. How do we contact them without getting arrested first? Sarah smiled grimly. We don't contact them. We make them come to us. What do you mean? We hold a press conference. We dump everything public. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence Richard collected. We make it impossible for Victoria to spin the narrative because the whole world will know the truth. It was a dangerous gamble. Going public would make them targets, but staying silent would let Victoria destroy them one by one through the legal system she corrupted. Maya thought about her father, murdered for his pharmaceutical breakthroughs. About Jennifer, kept in a coma for 20 years out of one man's guilt and another woman's greed. About Richard, who died trying to atone for his mistakes. When do we do it? Maya asked. Tomorrow, before Victoria's lawyers can get injunctions to stop us. Before the media loses interest in the story. Before she has time to eliminate the evidence or eliminate us. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of her family's legacy settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just seeking justice anymore. She was carrying the hopes of every family destroyed by corporate greed, every patient who died from ration medications, every person who'd trusted the system to protect them and been betrayed. Have you ever had to choose between playing it safe and doing what's right? Between protecting yourself and protecting others who can't protect themselves? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Maya was about to risk everything on the hope that truth could still matter in a world built on lies. As they packed the evidence into multiple briefcases, copies for different news outlets, different law enforcement agencies, Maya felt Richard's presence like a ghost over her shoulder. I won't let your death be meaningless, she whispered to his memory. Sarah looked up from the documents she was organizing. What did you say? Nothing. Just making a promise to someone who can't hear it anymore. But as they left the bank with evidence that could topple an empire, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Victoria might be out on bail, but that didn't mean she was sitting quietly waiting for justice to take its course. In the parking garage, Sarah grabbed Maya's arm. We're not going home tonight. We're not going anywhere Victoria might expect us to be. Why? Because desperate people do desperate things. And Victoria just lost everything she spent 25 years building. She's got nothing left to lose and everything to gain by making sure we don't live to testify against her. Maya looked over her shoulder as they got into Sarah's car, scanning the shadows for threats that might be real or imagined. Tomorrow, they would expose Victoria's crimes to the world. Tonight, they just had to survive long enough to make it happen. The engine turned over with a smooth purr, but as Sarah backed out of the parking space, Maya noticed another car's headlights turn on in the darkness behind them. Sarah, she said quietly, I see them. Hold on. Sarah floored the accelerator, and Maya realized that their fight for justice was about to become a fight for their lives. When your enemy has nothing left to lose, running becomes the only way to live long enough to expose the truth. The black SUV stayed 3 cars behind them as Sarah navigated the Atlanta traffic, but Maya could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on her chest. Every turn they made, every lane change, the vehicle followed with the patience of a predator stalking wounded prey. How long have they been following us? Maya asked, her voice tight with fear. Since we left the bank. Maybe before that. Sarah's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Victoria's not taking any chances. She knows what we found in that safety deposit box. Maya clutched the briefcase containing copies of Richard's evidence against her chest. 25 years of carefully documented crimes, financial records, recorded conversations. Everything they needed to destroy Victoria's empire. If they lived long enough to use it. Where are we going? Somewhere Victoria won't expect. Somewhere she can't use her connections to find us. Sarah took a sudden exit toward the airport, tires screaming as she cut across 2 lanes of traffic. The SUV behind them nearly collided with a taxi trying to follow, but managed to stay on their trail. The airport? We can't fly anywhere without identification. They'll track us. We're not flying. We're hiding in plain sight. Sarah pulled into the long-term parking garage, driving up the ramps until they reached the top level. The concrete structure was mostly empty, just a few cars belonging to travelers who wouldn't return for days or weeks. Get out. Bring everything. Maya grabbed both briefcases while Sarah popped the trunk and pulled out a duffel bag Maya hadn't known was there. Inside were cell phones, cash, fake identification cards, and what looked like enough supplies for a week in hiding. Sarah, how long have you been planning this? 15 years. I knew this day would come eventually. The day Victoria would try to kill anyone who threatened her empire. They abandoned Sarah's car and moved quickly toward a different section of the garage. Sarah pulled keys from her pocket and clicked a remote. The lights flashed on a nondescript Honda sedan parked between 2 larger vehicles. Backup transportation, Sarah explained. Clean plates, paid for in cash, registered to someone who doesn't exist. As they loaded their supplies into the Honda, Maya heard the sound of tires screeching from the lower levels. The SUV had found Sarah's abandoned car. Move. Now. They drove down the opposite ramp from where they'd entered, Sarah checking mirrors constantly as they merged back into traffic. For 20 minutes, they drove in silence through residential neighborhoods, taking random turns and doubling back on their route. I think we lost them, Maya said finally. For now. But Victoria has resources we can't imagine. Private investigators, corrupt cops, people who owe her favors. She'll find us eventually. Sarah pulled into the parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions about identification. This is where we're staying. This is where we're planning. Tomorrow morning, we hold that press conference. Tonight, we make sure we have backup plans in case something goes wrong. The motel room smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it had 2 double beds and a table where they could spread out Richard's evidence. Maya watched Sarah check the locks on the door and windows with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment. You've done this before, Maya realized. Gone into hiding. Not like this. But I've had 15 years to think about what I'd do when I finally got the chance to destroy Victoria. I've planned for every contingency. Sarah opened her laptop and connected to the motel's Wi-Fi. Within minutes, she had contact information for investigative journalists, federal prosecutors, and television producers who specialized in corporate corruption stories. We're going to hit them all at once, Sarah explained. Send copies of everything to 20 different news outlets and law enforcement agencies simultaneously. Make it impossible for Victoria to suppress the story through legal pressure or political connections. Maya spread Richard's financial records across the table, studying the pattern of payments and transfers that revealed 25 years of corporate murder. Every document told the story of families destroyed by greed, patients who died from ration medications, researchers whose work was stolen along with their lives. There's something else, Maya said, finding a folder she hadn't noticed at the bank. Medical records from the psychiatric facility where you were held. Sarah's expression hardened as she read through the documents. She wasn't just keeping me prisoner. She was using the patients as test subjects for experimental drugs. The records showed years of unauthorized medical experiments conducted on psychiatric patients who couldn't consent to treatment. New drug combinations tested on people who had no legal advocate, no family members checking on their care, no way to report abuse. This is why she kept you alive, Maya realized. Not just to prevent you from claiming your inheritance, but to use you as a lab rat for pharmaceutical research. And when the experiments were finished, we'd have convenient accidents or sudden deterioration of our mental health. Sarah's voice was cold with rage. She's been farming human test subjects for decades. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. You have something that belongs to me. Let's make a trade. Your life for the evidence. Midnight at the Robinson estate. Come alone or Sarah dies first. The message was followed by a photo that made Maya's heart stop. Victoria, standing over an unconscious woman tied to a chair in what looked like a basement. The woman's face was bruised and bloody, but Maya could see enough to recognize her. "That's not possible," Sarah whispered, looking over Maya's shoulder at the photo. "That's Jennifer." "But Jennifer died 2 years ago." Maya stared at the image, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. In his letter, he said he authorized withdrawal of life support, but he didn't. He moved her somewhere else. Why would he do that? Because he couldn't live with being responsible for her death. So he faked it instead. The implications crashed over Maya like a wave. Richard had been paying for Jennifer's care at a secret facility for 2 years, keeping their sister alive but hidden from the world. Now Victoria had found her and was using her as leverage. "It's a trap," Sarah said. "Victoria knows we won't let her hurt Jennifer. She's counting on us, showing up to save her. Then we don't go to the Robinson estate. We go to the police. With what proof? A text message and a photo that could be fake? Victoria's lawyers will claim we doctored the evidence to frame her." Maya felt the walls closing in around them. Every choice led to disaster. Save Jennifer and walk into Victoria's trap, or expose Victoria's crimes and let their sister die. There has to be another way. Sarah was already packing supplies into a backpack. "There is. We split up. You hold the press conference as planned. I go after Jennifer." "Absolutely not. We stick together." "Maya, listen to me. If we both go after Jennifer, Victoria wins. She kills all three of us and buries the evidence forever. If we both stay here, Jennifer dies and we live with that guilt forever. And if you go alone, you die trying to save her." Sarah's smile was grim as steel. "Maybe, but I've been preparing for this fight a lot longer than you have. And someone needs to survive this to make sure Victoria pays for what she's done." Maya watched her sister check the clip in her gun, saw the calculation in her eyes that reminded her of Victoria's cold pragmatism. Sarah wasn't just planning a rescue mission. She was planning a suicide mission that would take Victoria down with her. "Promise me something," Maya said. "What?" "Don't throw your life away for revenge. Jennifer wouldn't want that. Our father wouldn't want that. I'm not doing this for revenge anymore. I'm doing it for justice. For all the families she's destroyed, all the patients she's experimented on, all the people who died because she inflated drug prices to fund her lifestyle." Sarah shouldered her backpack and moved toward the door. "Hold that press conference at 9 a.m. sharp. By then, either Jennifer and I will be safe, or Victoria will be too busy dealing with a hostage situation gone wrong to stop you from exposing her crimes." Sarah waited, but her sister was already gone, disappearing into the night like a ghost seeking vengeance. Maya stared at the door for a long moment, then turned back to Richard's evidence. She had 8 hours to prepare a presentation that would destroy Victoria's empire. 8 hours to make sure Sarah's sacrifice wouldn't be meaningless. Have you ever had to choose between saving someone you love and doing what's right for the greater good? When personal loyalty conflicts with justice, which do you choose? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Maya was about to learn that some victories require losing everything you care about most. As Maya spread documents across the motel room table, preparing to expose 25 years of corporate murder, her phone buzzed with one final message. "Your sister thinks she's hunting me, but I've been hunting your family for decades. By morning, the Robinson bloodline ends forever. Sleep well." She walked into the abandoned mansion expecting to save one sister, but found herself trapped in a game where the only winning move was sacrifice. The Robinson estate stood against the storm clouds like a monument to family secrets, its broken windows and crumbling walls hiding shadows that moved with deadly purpose. Sarah crouched behind the garden wall, watching Victoria's cars positioned around the property like pieces on a chessboard. 3 black SUVs, 2 unmarked sedans, and Victoria's signature Mercedes. Too many vehicles for a simple hostage exchange. This wasn't just a trap, it was an execution plan with military precision. Sarah checked her watch. 11:30 p.m. Maya would be preparing for the morning press conference, probably worried sick, but hopefully smart enough to stay away from this place. Sarah had lied about splitting up to save Jennifer. She'd come here to make sure Victoria never had the chance to hurt another member of their family. Thunder rolled across the Georgia sky as Sarah moved through the overgrown gardens toward the main house. Every shadow could hide an armed guard. Every broken window could frame a sniper's scope. But 15 years of imprisonment had taught her patience, and 25 years of rage had taught her ruthlessness. She reached the servant's entrance she'd used as a child, surprised to find the door unlocked. Too easy. Victoria was herding her toward a specific location, controlling her movement through the house like a rat in a maze. The basement door stood open, faint light spilling up from below. Sarah could hear voices, Victoria's cultured tones mixing with the rough accents of hired muscle. Men discussing payment schedules and cleanup procedures like they were planning a business meeting instead of multiple murders. Is she secure? Victoria's voice carried clearly up the stairs. Cable ties, duct tape, the works. She ain't going anywhere. And the other two? Sarah's probably already in the building. Maya should be here within the hour. Sarah's blood ran cold. Victoria had counted on her coming alone, but somehow she also expected Maya to show up. Had Maya ignored her instructions and come after her? Or was Victoria just that confident in her ability to manipulate people's emotions? Sarah descended the basement stairs slowly, her gun drawn but held low. The lower level had been converted into something that looked like a medical facility. Hospital beds for stands, monitoring equipment that belonged in an intensive care unit rather than a family home. Welcome home, sister. Victoria stepped out of the shadows wearing surgical scrubs instead of her usual designer clothes. Her shoulder was bandaged from Sarah's bullet, but she moved without pain or limitation. Behind her, two men in tactical gear kept weapons trained on the figure tied to a hospital bed. Jennifer lay unconscious, hooked to machines that monitored her vital signs. She looked exactly like she had 20 years ago, unchanged by time, preserved in artificial sleep like a fairy tale princess waiting for true love's kiss. She's beautiful, isn't she? Victoria said conversationally. Richard did excellent work keeping her stable all these years. Brain activity minimal but present, body maintained in perfect condition. A living doll for my collection. Let her go. Your fight is with me, not her. Victoria laughed, the sound echoing off concrete walls. My fight is with every Robinson who thinks they deserve what I've built. Daddy chose your father as his business partner over mine. The patents that made our fortune should have belonged to both families equally. So you killed him and stole everything. I protected what was ours. Your father was weak, idealistic. He wanted to give away breakthrough medications for free, help poor families who couldn't afford treatment. He would have destroyed everything we'd worked to build. Victoria moved to Jennifer's bedside, checking the foredrip with practiced efficiency. Richard thought he was being merciful, keeping her in that vegetative state. But I saw potential. A perfect test subject for experimental procedures. Someone whose disappearance would never be investigated. You've been experimenting on her. For 2 years. New drug combinations, surgical techniques, psychological treatments. Jennifer has contributed more to medical science in her coma than she ever could have awake. Sarah's finger tightened on her gun trigger, but Victoria's men had clear shots at Jennifer if she made any aggressive moves. The equipment surrounding the bed looked sophisticated enough to keep their sister alive indefinitely, or sophisticated enough to kill her instantly if Victoria felt threatened. What do you want? I want you to understand that this was always inevitable. 3 daughters competing for one inheritance. Natural selection in its purest form. Victoria produced a syringe filled with clear liquid. The same cocktail I used on Richard. Fast-acting, mimics cardiac arrest, very difficult to detect post-mortem. Jennifer will die peacefully, and you will follow shortly after. A tragic murder-suicide between mentally ill sisters fighting over family money. And Maya will arrive just in time to find her bodies. Overcome with grief, she'll turn the gun on herself rather than face life without her newfound family. At least, that's what the scene will suggest. Sarah realized the full scope of Victoria's plan. Not just murder, but a narrative that would discredit any evidence Maya tried to present. The surviving sister, driven insane by family trauma, whose accusations against a respected pharmaceutical executive will be dismissed as the delusions of a grief-stricken woman. You've thought of everything. 25 years of practice. I've been perfecting the art of eliminating threats while maintaining public sympathy. Victoria approached Jennifer's bed with a syringe, but Sarah noticed something that made her heart race. Jennifer's eyes were open, tracking movement with the awareness of someone who was very much conscious. Their sister had been awake this entire time, listening to every word, understanding the full horror of what Victoria had done to their family. "Jennifer," Sarah whispered. Jennifer's eyes met hers with an intensity that communicated volumes. She was weak, drugged, but not the vegetative patient Victoria believed her to be. The experimental treatments had been backfiring, gradually restoring her consciousness instead of maintaining her comatose state. Victoria noticed Sarah's expression and turned to look at Jennifer. "Oh, you've realized she's aware." "Yes, that's been an interesting development. The new neurological stimulants I've been testing have had unexpected results." "You mean she's been conscious while you experimented on her?" "For several months now, unable to speak or move due to the paralytic agents, but perfectly capable of experiencing everything I've done to her." It's provided fascinating data about pain response in supposedly vegetative patients. The casual cruelty in Victoria's voice made Sarah sick. This woman hadn't just stolen their inheritance or murdered their father. She'd been torturing their sister for months while using her as a human laboratory animal. "Any last words before I finish what I started 25 years ago?" Sarah looked at Jennifer, saw something in her eyes that looked like communication. Their sister was trying to tell her something, some message that could only be conveyed through desperate movements and tiny facial expressions. Then Sarah understood. Jennifer hadn't been completely paralyzed. She'd been regaining muscle control gradually, hiding her recovery from Victoria while planning her own escape. The cable ties around her wrists were looser than they appeared. The monitoring equipment had been subtly disconnected. Jennifer was ready to fight. "Yes," Sarah said to Victoria. "I have something to say." "Make it quick." Sarah smiled, raising her gun toward Victoria, but speaking to Jennifer. "Now would be a good time, sister." Jennifer's eyes flashed with 20 years of suppressed rage as she tore free from her restraints with strength that shocked everyone in the room. The monitoring equipment crashed to the floor as she rolled off the bed, grabbing a medical instrument from a nearby tray. Victoria's men spun toward the unexpected threat, giving Sarah the opening she needed. She put 2 bullets center mass into the first gunman, while Jennifer drove a surgical scalpel into the second man's neck with the precision of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. Victoria stumbled backward, the syringe falling from her hands as chaos erupted around her. She pulled a gun from her surgical scrubs, but Jennifer was already moving, 20 years of stored energy and rage channeled into pure violence. The sisters fought Victoria together. Sarah with bullets, Jennifer with blades, and 20 years of medical knowledge about exactly where to cut to cause maximum damage. Victoria managed to get off 2 shots, but her aim was wild, panicked by the resurrection of a sister she'd thought was helpless. When the violence ended, Victoria lay bleeding on the concrete floor, her designer empire built on stolen formulas and murdered families finally crumbling around her. "How long have you been awake?" Sarah asked Jennifer as they checked each other for injuries. 6 months. Jennifer's voice was hoarse from disuse, but strong with determination. Long enough to hear her confess to everything. Long enough to remember how to hate. "We need to get Maya. Victoria's people will be looking for us." Jennifer nodded, helping Sarah gather evidence from Victoria's makeshift medical facility. "There's more. Files upstairs showing other patients she's been experimenting on. Financial records proving she's been selling research data to foreign pharmaceutical companies. This goes deeper than just our family." As they prepared to leave the basement that had been Jennifer's prison, Sarah looked back at Victoria's body. 25 years of murder and manipulation, ended by the sister she'd underestimated most. "Is it over?" Jennifer asked. Not until Maya holds that press conference and the world knows what she did to our family. They climbed the basement stairs together, two sisters who'd survived decades of imprisonment and experimentation, ready to help the third sister destroy the empire built on their blood. But as they reached the main floor, they heard the sound of cars approaching. More of Victoria's people, or police responding to the gunshots, or Maya ignoring instructions and coming to save them. Have you ever discovered strength you didn't know you possessed when someone you loved was threatened? When survival required violence, did you find yourself capable of things you never imagined? Share your experiences in the comments, because Jennifer and Sarah were about to learn that some family reunions require washing blood off your hands. Jennifer grabbed Sarah's arm as headlights swept across the broken windows. That's not Victoria's people. That's Maya. Through the shattered glass, they could see their youngest sister running toward the house, carrying a briefcase and followed by what looked like news crews and police vehicles. Maya hadn't just ignored the plan to stay safe. She brought the press conference to them. When the cameras started rolling, Maya had to choose between exposing a killer or protecting the sisters who'd just become killers themselves. The floodlights from 3 news vans turned the Robinson estate into a stage where family secrets would be revealed to millions of viewers. Maya stood on the front steps, clutching Richard's briefcase, watching reporters set up equipment while police secured the perimeter. She called every media contact Sarah had provided, telling them she had evidence of pharmaceutical industry corruption and multiple murders. What she hadn't expected was for them to follow her to the estate when she'd refused to wait for morning. Detective Morrison approached her as camera crews tested their equipment. "Ms. Robinson, we need to talk about why you brought news teams to an active crime scene." "What crime scene?" "I came here to hold a press conference about my father's murder. We've had reports of gunfire, multiple shots from inside the building." Maya's heart raced as she processed what that meant. Sarah had gone inside to save Jennifer, and something had gone wrong. Either her sisters were dead, or they'd killed Victoria and anyone else who tried to stop them. "I need to check on my sisters." "Nobody goes inside until we clear the building. If there are victims or suspects in there, the only suspect you need to worry about is Victoria Lawson. She's been murdering people for 25 years, and I have proof." Maya opened Richard's briefcase and pulled out financial records, recorded phone conversations, and medical files that documented decades of corporate crimes. The evidence spilled across the front steps of her family home like confessions written in blood. "Detective Morrison, you need to see this." Channel 7's lead investigative reporter, Amanda Chun, approached with her camera crew. Maya had watched her exposés on corporate corruption for years, hoping someday someone would investigate Victoria's empire with the same thoroughness. "Ms. Robinson, you said you have evidence of pharmaceutical industry murders." "I have evidence that Victoria Lawson, CEO of Lawson Pharmaceuticals, has been systematically murdering researchers, patients, and family members who threatened her profit margins." Maya spread documents across the estate's front steps while cameras rolled, and Detective Morrison read financial records that proved 25 years of conspiracy. Bank transfers connected to convenient accidents, insurance policies altered after suspicious deaths, medical research stolen from murdered scientists. These recordings were made by Richard Lawson, Victoria's husband, before she murdered him 2 days ago, Maya explained to the cameras. They prove she's been inflating drug prices, conducting illegal medical experiments, and eliminating anyone who discovered her crimes. Amanda Chin studied the medical files showing unauthorized drug testing on psychiatric patients. This is incredible. If these documents are authentic, we're looking at one of the largest pharmaceutical conspiracies in American history. They're authentic, and there's more evidence inside that building, if the police will let me retrieve it. Detective Morrison was reading Victoria's recorded confession about manipulating insurance claims that led to patient deaths. His expression grew darker with each page. "Ms. Robinson, this changes everything. If Victoria Lawson is inside that building." Gunfire erupted from somewhere in the basement, followed by shouting and the crash of medical equipment. Maya started toward the front door, but Detective Morrison grabbed her arm. "Stay back. Let's handle this. My sisters are in there. Sarah and Jennifer Robinson. Victoria's been holding them prisoner. More police arrived as the sounds of violence echoed through the broken windows. Maya watched tactical officers surround the building while news cameras captured every moment of what was becoming the biggest pharmaceutical scandal in decades. This is Amanda Chun reporting live from the Robinson estate, where shocking evidence has emerged linking pharmaceutical heiress Victoria Lawson to multiple murders spanning 25 years. Maya found herself thrust into the spotlight as cameras focused on her face. Millions of people would see this broadcast, including federal prosecutors, FBI agents, and pharmaceutical executives who've been covering for Victoria's crimes for decades. Ms. Robinson, can you tell us about your father's murder? Dr. Marcus Robinson was killed in 1999 because he discovered Victoria Lawson's father was stealing his pharmaceutical research. The patents that built the Lawson empire were developed by my father, and when he threatened to expose the theft, they murdered him and made it look like an accident. Maya held up the DNA evidence, proving her biological connection to the Robinson family fortune. I'm not just a witness to these crimes. I'm the rightful heir to an inheritance that was stolen through murder and fraud. The front door of the estate opened, and Sarah emerged supporting Jennifer, both sisters covered in blood but very much alive. Behind them, police officers escorted a gurney carrying Victoria's body under a white sheet. Maya ran toward her sisters, cameras following her reunion with family members she'd thought were lost forever. Jennifer looked exactly like their father, despite 20 years in a coma. Sarah looked like a warrior who'd finally won her war. Is it over? Maya asked, embracing both sisters. Victoria's dead, Sarah confirmed. She tried to inject Jennifer with poison, but our sister wasn't as helpless as Victoria thought. Jennifer's voice was hoarse but strong. I've been conscious for months, gathering evidence of everything she did to patients in that psychiatric facility. Maya, she wasn't just experimenting on me. There were dozens of us, people whose families paid to keep them hidden while Victoria used them as test subjects. Detective Morrison approached the three sisters as news crews recorded their conversation. I'm going to need statements from all of you about what happened in that basement. It was self-defense, Sarah said simply. Victoria was trying to murder us. We fought back. Maya looked at her sisters, seeing blood on their clothes and violence in their eyes. They'd survived decades of imprisonment, experimentation, and psychological torture. They'd killed Victoria and her accomplices to protect each other and expose crimes that went back 25 years. Detective, before you take their statements, you need to see what we found in that basement, Maya said. Medical equipment, patient records, evidence of human experimentation that makes Nazi Germany look merciful. Amanda Chun was interviewing other family members of psychiatric patients who'd been gathering outside the estate as news of Victoria's crime spread. Maya watched parents and siblings who'd been told their loved ones were receiving excellent care, never knowing they were being used as laboratory animals. The scope of this conspiracy goes beyond anything we initially imagined, Amanda reported to her television audience. What started as a pharmaceutical inheritance dispute has revealed decades of medical experimentation, insurance fraud, and systematic murder. Maya turned to address the cameras directly. Victoria Lawson spent 25 years stealing research, inflating drug prices, and murdering anyone who threatened her profits. Families went bankrupt trying to afford medications that cost pennies to produce. Children died because their parents couldn't pay for treatments that were marked up thousands of %. She held up financial records showing Victoria's personal expenditures funded by stolen research and inflated medication prices. This woman bought yachts and mansions with money that should have saved lives. She built an empire on the graves of patients who died from ration medications. Federal agents were arriving now, attracted by the media coverage and evidence of crimes that crossed state lines. Maya watched FBI vehicles join the police cars, knowing that Victoria's death wouldn't end the investigation into her pharmaceutical empire. Ms. Robinson, Agent Martinez introduced himself. We've been building a case against Lawson Pharmaceuticals for 3 years. Your evidence could help us prosecute dozens of other executives who were complicit in these crimes. Maya looked at her sisters, both exhausted from their ordeal, but determined to see justice done. We'll cooperate fully, but I want immunity for Sarah and Jennifer. They were victims defending themselves, not criminals. Given the evidence of what Victoria Lawson did to your family, that shouldn't be a problem. As dawn broke over Atlanta, the Robinson estate was crawling with investigators, reporters, and families of Victoria's victims. Maya stood with her sisters watching the sun rise on a world where their father's murder would finally be acknowledged, where psychiatric patients would receive protection from medical experimentation, where pharmaceutical companies would face consequences for prioritizing profits over human life. What happens now? Jennifer asked. Now we rebuild, Maya said. We use the inheritance Victoria stole to create the foundation our father would have wanted. We make sure families never have to choose between medicine and food again. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile Maya had seen from her sister. And we make sure everyone knows the Robinson name represents justice, not just pharmaceutical patents. Amanda Chun approached for one final interview as federal agents led Victoria's accomplices away in handcuffs. Ms. Robinson, what do you want people to remember about this story? Maya looked into the camera, thinking about her mother who'd died from ration medications, her father who'd been murdered for his idealism, and the thousands of families destroyed by corporate greed. I want people to remember that some fights are worth everything. That family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to protect each other against impossible odds. And that sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to make sure their killers face justice. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, Maya sat on the front steps of the Robinson estate with her sisters, watching federal agents carry evidence out of the basement where Victoria had conducted her experiments. The empire built on their family's blood was finally crumbling, but the work of rebuilding would take years. Have you ever had to choose between playing it safe and exposing dangerous truths? Between protecting yourself and protecting others who can't protect themselves? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Maya's decision to go public with Victoria's crimes would save thousands of lives, but the personal cost would change her family forever. Jennifer squeezed Maya's hand as they watched the last of Victoria's accomplices being arrested. Do you think Daddy would be proud? Maya looked at the evidence that would finally give their father justice, at the sisters who'd survived decades of imprisonment and torture, at the media coverage that would prevent Victoria's crimes from ever being repeated. I think he'd be proud that we chose truth over safety, that we chose each other over everything else. As the three sisters walked away from the estate that had held so many family secrets, Maya's phone buzzed with calls from pharmaceutical companies, government agencies, and families of Victoria's victims. The fight for justice was just beginning, but they would face it together. The Robinson bloodline hadn't just survived Victoria's attempt to eliminate them. They'd become something more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Witnesses with evidence, survivors with stories, and sisters with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. 6 months later, Maya stood in a federal courtroom watching pharmaceutical executives face justice, but victory tasted like ashes when she realized the cost of exposing the truth. The mahogany panel courtroom was packed with reporters, victims' families, and pharmaceutical industry executives who'd spent decades covering for Victoria's crimes. Maya sat in the front row between Sarah and Jennifer, watching federal prosecutors present evidence that would send half of Victoria's business associates to prison for life. 6 months had passed since that night at the Robinson estate. 6 months of congressional hearings, FBI investigations, and media coverage that had transformed Maya from an unknown nurse into the face of pharmaceutical industry reform. The Robinson Foundation had been established using the inheritance Victoria had stolen, providing free medications to families who couldn't afford treatment. But success felt hollow when Maya looked at what the fight had cost her family. Jennifer sat beside her wearing dark glasses to hide the damage from 20 years of medical experimentation. The sister who'd spent decades in a coma was struggling to adapt to a world that had changed completely during her imprisonment. Simple activities like grocery shopping or watching television overwhelmed her with sensory input her brain couldn't process. Sarah had thrown herself into hunting down other pharmaceutical executives who'd participated in Victoria's conspiracy. She spent 18 hours a day reviewing financial records, tracking money transfers, building cases against people who'd profited from stolen research and inflated drug prices. The sister who'd survived 15 years of imprisonment had simply traded one obsession for another. As the jury reached a verdict, Judge Patterson asked, "We have, Your Honor." Maya watched the jury foreman stand to read verdicts that would determine whether months of investigation and testimony had been worth the trauma of reliving their family's destruction. In the case of the United States versus Lawson Pharmaceuticals, we find the corporation guilty of conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. In the case of the United States versus James Morrison, former chief financial officer, we find the defendant guilty on all counts. One by one, Victoria's accomplices were convicted of crimes that would put them in federal prison for decades. The pharmaceutical empire built on stolen research and murdered scientists was finally paying for 25 years of corporate violence. But Maya felt no satisfaction watching the guilty verdicts. These convictions wouldn't bring back her parents, wouldn't undo the experimentation Jennifer had endured, wouldn't erase the psychological damage Sarah carried from 15 years of imprisonment. "Ms. Robinson?" Amanda Chun approached as the court session ended. "Can we get your reaction to today's verdicts?" Maya looked around the courtroom at families who'd been destroyed by Victoria's greed. Parents whose children had died from ration medications, siblings whose loved ones had been used as test subjects, researchers whose work had been stolen along with their lives. "Justice and healing aren't the same thing," Maya said quietly. "These verdicts prove that crimes were committed, but they can't fix the damage those crimes caused." Amanda's camera crew recorded families crying with relief as federal agents led convicted executives away in handcuffs. The pharmaceutical industry would face new regulations, higher penalties for price manipulation, and closer scrutiny of research practices. Victoria's empire had become the catalyst for reforms that would protect thousands of future patients. Will you continue advocating for pharmaceutical reform? Maya looked at her sisters, both still healing from decades of trauma. "We'll continue fighting for families who can't afford treatment. But the personal cost of this fight has been higher than any of us anticipated." Outside the courthouse, protesters and supporters gathered to hear Maya's statement about the verdicts. She'd become a reluctant celebrity, invited to speak at medical conferences and congressional hearings about pharmaceutical industry corruption. The nurse from Baltimore who'd started this journey seeking answers about her mother's death had become a national advocate for healthcare reform. But celebrity came with a price Maya hadn't expected. Maya Robinson is either a hero or a publicity seeker, depending on who you ask, one news commentator had reported. Some see her as a courageous whistleblower who exposed pharmaceutical industry corruption. Others question whether her motives were really about justice or about claiming a family inheritance worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The criticism stung because it contained a grain of truth. Maya had inherited pharmaceutical patents worth $800 million, making her one of the wealthiest women in Georgia overnight. The Robinson Foundation helped thousands of families access affordable medications, but Maya's personal fortune remained a source of controversy. "Do you ever regret exposing Victoria's crimes?" Sarah asked as they walked toward their car through crowds of reporters and protesters. Maya considered the question seriously. If she'd never investigated her mother's insurance claim denial, if she'd never met Richard at that charity gala, if she'd never discovered the truth about their father's murder, would their lives have been better? Sarah would still be imprisoned in a psychiatric facility, slowly being poisoned by experimental drugs. Jennifer would still be trapped in artificial unconsciousness, used as a test subject for medical procedures she couldn't consent to. Victoria would still be murdering researchers and inflating drug prices that killed patients who couldn't afford treatment. "No," Maya said firmly. "I don't regret it, but I wish the cost hadn't been so high." Jennifer struggled with simple conversations, her brain still recovering from decades of medically induced unconsciousness. Sarah couldn't sleep through the night without nightmares about her imprisonment. Maya had gained two sisters, but lost the illusion that justice always triumphs over evil. They drove home in silence, each sister lost in thoughts about the future they'd fought so hard to secure. 1 year later, Maya discovered that some endings are actually beginnings, and that family isn't just about sharing blood. It's about choosing to heal together. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Robinson Medical Center drew crowds from across Atlanta, but Maya only had eyes for the two women standing beside her. Sarah and Jennifer had spent the past year slowly rebuilding their lives, learning to trust the world again after decades of imprisonment and experimentation. "Ready to make this official?" Maya asked, holding the oversized scissors that would open the first medical facility funded entirely by their recovered inheritance. The center would provide free health care to families who couldn't afford treatment, specializing in mental health services for trauma survivors and pharmaceutical research conducted with full patient consent and transparency. Everything Victoria's empire had corrupted, the Robinson sisters were determined to restore. "Dad would be proud," Jennifer said, her voice stronger now after months of speech therapy and psychological counseling. Sarah nodded, wearing a genuine smile that had taken months to develop. "He'd be proud that we turned our pain into purpose." Maya cut the ribbon as cameras flashed and crowds cheered, but her attention was focused on the patients already waiting to receive care. Elderly diabetics who'd been rationing insulin, children with asthma whose families couldn't afford inhalers, psychiatric patients who'd been abandoned by a system that saw them as disposable. "Dr. Robinson?" A young nurse approached Maya with a clipboard. "Your first patient is here." Maya had returned to nursing school after the trials ended, earning her doctorate in healthcare administration while building the Robinson Foundation. She discovered that her true calling wasn't just exposing corruption, but providing alternatives to the systems that failed vulnerable families. Her first patient was an 8-year-old girl with leukemia whose parents had been forced to choose between cancer treatment and keeping their home. Under Victoria's pricing structure, the child's medications would have cost more than most families earned a year. At the Robinson Medical Center, they were free. "Hi, sweetie," Maya said, kneeling beside the examination table. "I'm Dr. Maya. I hear you're going to help us fight some bad cells in your blood." The little girl's mother cried as Maya explained the treatment plan that wouldn't bankrupt their family or force them into medical debt. This was why they'd fought Victoria's empire, not for revenge, but for moments like this when healthcare became about healing instead of profit. After her shift ended, Maya found Sarah and Jennifer in the center's research wing, reviewing protocol for the pharmaceutical development program they'd established. Sarah had earned degrees in business and law during her recovery, focusing her intelligence on preventing the kind of corporate corruption that had destroyed their family. Jennifer had become the center's chief medical researcher, using her experiences as Victoria's test subject to develop ethical standards for human medical trials. The sister who'd survived 20 years of unauthorized experimentation was now protecting other patients from similar abuse. "How was your first day as a practicing doctor?" Sarah asked. "Exhausting. Rewarding. Everything I hoped it would be." Maya sat down at the conference table where they held their weekly family meetings. "But I keep thinking about something Amanda Chun asked me yesterday." "What's that?" She wanted to know if we've really won. If destroying Victoria's empire was worth everything we went through. Jennifer considered the question while reviewing patient files. "I think we won when we chose to survive instead of seeking revenge. Victoria wanted to eliminate the Robinson bloodline, but we're still here. We're stronger than we were before." Sarah pulled up financial reports showing the impact of their foundation work over the past year. "We've provided free medications to 40,000 families. We've prevented 17 pharmaceutical companies from price gouging essential treatments. We've established ethical standards for medical research that are being adopted nationwide." But Maya sensed hesitation in her sister's voice. "But sometimes I wonder if we're just treating symptoms instead of curing the disease. Victoria's gone, but the system that enabled her is still in place. Other pharmaceutical executives are still inflating prices, still prioritizing profits over patients, still getting away with corporate murder. Maya understood Sarah's frustration. The Robinson Foundation helped thousands of families, but millions more were still struggling with medical debt, ration medications, and healthcare systems that treated patients as profit centers instead of human beings. Maybe that's not our job, Maya said. Maybe our job is just to save the families we can reach, train the next generation of healthcare providers to do better, and trust that change happens one patient at a time. Jennifer looked up from her research notes. I've been thinking about something else. About forgiveness. Both sisters turned to her, curious about where this conversation was heading. I've been angry at Victoria for so long that I forgot I was also angry at myself. For not being strong enough to prevent Dad's murder, for not protecting you from imprisonment, for not finding a way to escape sooner. Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. Jennifer, none of that was your fault. I know that now. But for months after waking up, I carried guilt that wasn't mine to carry. Therapy helped me understand that healing isn't just about getting justice for what happened to us. It's about choosing not to let that trauma define the rest of our lives. Sarah nodded slowly. I used to think recovery meant making Victoria pay for what she did. Now, I think recovery means building something better than what she destroyed. Maya looked around the medical center they'd created. Patients receiving care, researchers developing ethical treatments, nurses who'd been trained to see dignity in every person who walked through their doors. This was their father's legacy, finally fulfilled after 25 years of corporate corruption. Do you think we'll ever feel normal? Maya asked, like a regular family instead of trauma survivors who happen to be related? Jennifer smiled, the first completely unguarded expression Maya had seen from her. I don't think we'll ever be normal, but I think we can be happy. And maybe happiness is better than normal anyway. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message that made her expression brighten. Speaking of happiness, someone wants to meet you both. Who? His name is David. He's a public defender who's been helping families sue pharmaceutical companies for medical debt. We've been working together on some cases, and, well, I'd like you to meet him. Maya felt a surge of protective concern. After everything Sarah had endured, the thought of her sister trusting someone new felt dangerous. Are you sure you're ready for that? I'm sure I'm tired of letting fear make decisions for me. David knows about our history, about what Victoria did to our family. He's not running away, and he's not trying to fix me. He just likes who I am now. Jennifer reached across the table to squeeze Sarah's hand. Then we'd like to meet him too. As they locked up the medical center for the night, Maya reflected on how much had changed since that charity gala where she'd first met Richard. She'd been seeking answers about her mother's insurance claim, never imagining she'd uncover a conspiracy that stretched back decades. The answers had cost her more than she'd ever expected to pay. Richard's death, months of legal battles, the psychological trauma of discovering family members she'd never known existed, the weight of becoming a public figure advocating for healthcare reform. But the answers had also given her more than she'd ever dared to hope for. Two sisters who understood survival in ways most people never would, a medical foundation that honored their father's memory, and a knowledge that they'd prevented other families from suffering the losses that had defined their lives. Maya, Jennifer called out as they reached their cars. Yeah, thank you for not giving up when it would have been easier. For choosing to fight instead of just accepting that life is unfair. Maya hugged both her sisters, feeling the strength they developed through surviving impossible circumstances. They weren't the same people who'd been scattered by Victoria's crimes 25 years ago. There was something new, something forged by trauma, but not defined by it. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't just about blood, Maya replied. It's about choosing to save each other, even when the cost seems too high. As they drove away from the medical center, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Amanda Chin. 1 year later, how do you measure success? Maya thought about the question as she drove through Atlanta's streets, past billboards advertising pharmaceutical companies that were now subject to stricter regulations because of their family's fight for justice. She thought about the 8-year-old girl with leukemia who would receive free treatment The elderly diabetics who no longer had to ration insulin, the psychiatric patients who would never be used as test subjects without their consent. She thought about Sarah learning to trust someone new, Jennifer rebuilding her identity after decades in a coma, and the Robinson Foundation providing health care to families who couldn't afford it anywhere else. Maya pulled over and typed her response. Success isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something better than what they destroyed. It's about choosing hope over hatred, healing over revenge, and love over everything else that tries to tear families apart. Have you ever discovered that your greatest victory wasn't defeating someone who hurt you, but choosing to heal instead of seeking revenge? That sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to help the living? Share your thoughts in the comments, because Maya's journey proved that some battles are won not with violence, but with the courage to build something beautiful from the ruins of what was destroyed. As Maya drove home to the house, she shared with her sisters. She realized that their father had finally gotten the legacy he dreamed of. Not pharmaceutical patents that made families rich, but a foundation that made healthcare accessible to families who needed it most. The Robinson name would be remembered not for the empire that was stolen from them, but for the medical center they'd built to serve others. Not for the inheritance they'd recovered, but for what they'd chosen to do with their second chance at family. Some stories end with revenge. Others end with justice. But the best stories end with hope and the understanding that love is stronger than trauma, that healing is possible even after devastating loss, and that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is choose to build instead of destroy. The Robinson sisters had survived everything Victoria's empire had done to tear them apart. Now, they were building something that would help other families survive whatever tried to tear them apart. That was victory. That was justice. That was love winning in the end.